What is up, YouTube? My name is Taco Bell, and today I've got a Holy Priest PvP guide for the War Within Season 3. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a 6-time gladiator. I got my first glad in BFA, and I think my highest rating in 3s is 3015. I'm currently like rank 700 and something on the ladder, which isn't something that I pay attention to, but for the purposes of this video, I want to look that up just to let y'all know that I am a relatively good source of information on this spec. Holy Priest is quite a bit of fun to play right now. I'd say it's the most fun I've had with it in a couple of seasons. I think that it's in a good spot in the meta, definitely like a top 3 healer, kind of depending on what comp you're playing. I'd say its strengths for the Holy Priest right now are that it has high HPS, so the throughput is good compared to other healers. It has quite a bit of instant healing. Anytime you're in a meta where you're casting a lot and opening yourself up to interrupts, it just feels difficult. So right now I think you have quite a bit of instant healing. You have crowd control, so you could always run in and chastise and then fear a target if you ever needed to do so for your team. And you have pretty good CC avoidance compared to other healers. You've got Holy Ward if you want to play that PvP talent. You've got Fade to avoid CC as long as you're playing Phase Shift. And you've got Shadow Word Death to break any CC on you. So I think that those would really be the strengths of Holy Priest right now. Weaknesses right now I'd say are low mobility. If I compare myself to like a Resto Druid or a Preservation Evoker, I feel like they're able to kind of fly around the map and do whatever they want as I'm just waddling at them. Another weakness would be no damage reduction, so sometimes the burst of classes can feel really difficult to heal through, or maybe someone on your team just gets gibbed because you don't have any sort of damage reduction cooldowns. That's kind of the trade-off for being such a high HPS healer. And I also think sometimes your mana is not as strong as other healers. I'm not saying that Holy Priest mana is bad right now, but I do think that in certain matchups it is a liability. Overall though, I think Holy Priest is in a great spot. You can play a lot of different comps and do well, especially if your goal is just to get Gladiator and improve. Alright, let's talk about how we want to gear our priest this season. Thankfully, our stat priority hasn't changed, and we're still focused on mastery, then versatility, then haste, then crit. So outside of our 4-piece tier set and our cloak that we're given through the new zone, we're just going to craft pieces that are verse mastery, like my glove, or my bracers here. Let's talk about our tier pieces that we're going to use. We're going to use the helm, the chest, the gloves, and the pants. The shoulders are going to be crafted because the shoulders are super high in crit and we don't really care about that stat. So you can see right here I've actually got the gladiator shoulders on. Once I've got more conquest, I'll actually craft a pair instead so that it has a little bit more mastery than this. The reason we want to use our 4-piece tier set is because the 2 set is Casting Prayer of Mending, heals your target for 1.7 million. That's just free healing every time you press Palm. And for the 4 set, Casting Premonition of Piety or Premonition of Solace grants 2 stacks of Premonition of Insight at 100% effectiveness. Consuming a stack of Premonition of Insight increases your haste by 1% for 10 seconds. The haste is kind of irrelevant to me. I don't know, probably more hardcore people care about it, but what I really care about is the first part of that 4-piece. Basically, it's saying anytime you press Premonition that's not one of the CDR premonitions, you gain 2 stacks of the CDR premonition. So what that means is that we're going to get a lot more palm casts throughout the game because of that extra CDR that we're getting each time we press Premonition. So that's nice, and when you pair that with the 2 set bonus, you're going to get extra healing every time you press Palm, and that has great synergy with the talents that we're going to be speaking about next. Alright, let's talk about talents now. This is my baseline build, and I'll share a copy of the code that you can use for that in the description in case if you'd like it. Let's focus on the priest tree on the left first. Some of these talents are movable depending on what you're facing, like Angelic Bulwark, Body and Soul, Move with Grace, Mind Control, things like this I may not play every single game. Holy Nova. Mind Control, maybe I'm fighting a class that has diseases and I want to dispel those. I feel comfortable dropping Mind Control for that. Or maybe I want a root, so I play Void Tendrils instead. Or maybe I still want Mind Control, but I think I'm not going to be a kill target throughout the game, so I can drop Angelic Bulwark. And maybe I want Mass Dispel. And I don't need a shorter cooldown on Leap of Faith. for that game, so I can play Mental Agility, which gives me reduced mana cost on my dispels. This is really helpful for when I'm fighting, say, Mage Lock, and I know I'm going to be mashing Dispel. And then I'll also play Purification, which gives me 2 charges of Dispel, and it also puts a little shield on my friendly target whenever I Dispel them. So something like this is what I'd play against Mage Lock. One thing to point out on this tree on the left is that we're no longer playing Power Word Life, and we're playing Benevolence, and it's just shown to have more value this season. You're getting a lot more HPS by playing this talent instead of Power Word Life. It will feel really bad when you first switch off. You're going to think, wow, I don't have that instant healing that I used to have. But it's just going to take a bit of playing to get used to it, and you'll realize, okay, you actually do have the instant healing. You just have to get used to how to play it. Our Oracle tree is not going to be changed at all, except for this talent. We were playing Miraculous Recovery last season, which just empowered our Power Word Life. Since that's no longer applicable, we're going to play Waste No Time. So every time you press Premonition, you get a free instant cast heal. It's instant healing on top of the fact that it gives you CDR on your Serenities, which is nice every time you press heal. I don't change anything in the Oracle tree ever. I do see some people playing Prophet's Will instead of Desperate Measures, but I always play Desperate Measures. For the Holy Tree, you don't really have a lot of wiggle room with the build. You can maybe drop a point in Enlightenment if you want stun. So maybe you're playing a comp that is lacking in stuns. You would drop this to gain that. Or maybe you're playing with specs that you don't think benefit much from Symbol of Hope and you don't think you're going to have mana issues. You could play something like Burning Vehemence in place, which is just extra damage. For me, just having the extra mana is nice, so I kind of default to this. And then if I think I still need the extra mana but I want to play stun, I might drop a point in Desperate Times instead and move that to Censure right here. Otherwise, I'm not changing these talents at all, so let me get back to the original build here. You can see Epiphany. Your Holy Words have a 25% chance to cause your next Prayer of Mending to ignore its cooldown. So again, with our tier set, every time we press Palm, we get a lot of free healing. So if we're resetting the cooldown on our Palm, that's nice. That's great. That's free healing. Answered Prayers, every time that Palm heals 50 times, you gain Apotheosis for 8 seconds. So that's just helping with CDR on things like Chastise and your Serenities. So there's quite a bit of change on the Holy Tree. I think last season we were playing more of like a Flash Heal, Power Word Life, and Serenity based build. So we were playing Resonant Words and Crisis Management. I don't think that Lightwell was super meta last season either, but I did actually quite a bit of testing and comparing of games with different talents to see what gave me the most HPS, and the only time that Lightwell wouldn't be better than another talent here is if, like, my Lightwell just got placed in a terrible spot and got line of sighted all game. So this seems to be the best build, and really if you just want to change a point for stun or this point for stun, then you can do that. Otherwise, I would keep it all the same the whole time. For PvP talents, I'm always running Phase Shift and I'm always running Spirit of the Redeemer. I run Holy Word like 70% of the time, and then when I'm not running it, I'm running Purification, Ray of Hope, and sometimes Divine Ascension. Divine Ascension I would really only play into melee cleaves that I think will train me, so like maybe Frost DK stuff, like Frost DK Dev or Frost DK Windwalker. The nice thing about this ability is you can use it while you're strangulated, so it's great in that if you think you're a kill target. I really like playing Holy Ward most of the time just because it's a fun ability. You can use it to immune CC and outplay the opponent. I think a lot of times Ray of Hope has great value and I don't use it, but it's kind of just a player preference thing. So if you feel like you're getting a lot of value out of Ray of Hope, do that. I would recommend, if you're using Ray of Hope, to download the weak aura for it. There's a weak aura that calculates the amount that it's going to heal for, and that's super helpful so that you don't over heal into it or you don't under heal into it. the next thing I want to talk about is macros, and I think keybinds and macros and things like that are very personal preference-y. So if this doesn't really float your boat, then don't use it. But these are macros that I found helpful for me. You can see that my first 3 spells here on keybinds 1, 2, and 3 are macros, and they're just simple help harm macros, which reduces keybinds required for spells. So my first one, if I'm targeting a friendly target, it'll cast Renew. If I'm targeting an enemy target, it'll cast Shadow Word Pain. Same for number 2. If I'm targeting a friendly target, it casts Heal. If I'm targeting an enemy target, it casts Smite. And the third one does the same thing. Enemy target gets Holy Fired, and the friendly target gets Flash Healed. So... and I have a Mind Blast version actually for disc, but yeah, for Holy, right here, Flash Heal or Holy Fire, depending on if it's a friendly or an enemy target. So that just reduced, you know, I'm using 3 keybinds instead of 6 there, so that's nice. Number 4 is, in my opinion, a must-have. This is a Shadow Word Death macro. So it will automatically target the nearest enemy to me if I'm not currently targeting an enemy, and Shadow Word Death them, and that's helpful for breaking CC. Here is that macro for you. Give you a second to jot that down. I have a second Shadow Word Death macro down here on the second row, and that's just to Shadow Word Death my focus target. I don't use that very often, but it's there in case. So this Dispel macro here is really nice, and again, I think it's a must-have. It puts your Purge and your Dispel in one button, so if I'm targeting an enemy, it will purge them, and if I am targeting a friendly target, it will dispel them. So it's just nice to have that all in one button. I do have a focus Dispel Magic macro also, and that will purge an enemy that's set as my focus. Like mages, whenever they're alter timing, you can purge them without changing your target. Things like that are nice. These 3 right here are all at cursor macros. This one is blanked out right now because I'm not spec'd into Mass Dispel, but what it would do is, or actually I am. Am I? Oh, apply changes. It'll cast Mass Dispel at my target, or at my cursor. Same with Lightwell, and it'll also put down, if I'm in a raid group, it'll put down a yellow beam here so that people see the raid marker and they know where it is. Now there's pings in the game, so if you're a ping gamer, you could implement a ping into that instead. Holy Word Sanctify, same thing. Wherever my cursor is, the Holy Word Sanctify goes. One more thing to point out with the macros is that my Shadow Word Death and Fade macros have a line in them that is the same, and that is this Cancel Aura Spirit of Redemption. You want to make sure you're including that because there are times where you are in Spirit of Redemption form and you get a Ring of Frost put below you and you want to death it or you want to fade it. These macros will allow you to do so. If you don't have that in the macro, you will get crowd controlled for sure. All right, let's talk about the hot topic of add-ons. I've heard that these are getting potentially removed at midnight, so I think Blizzard is aware that they're quite out of hand, but I recommend that if you're a newer player or an established player, that Weak Auras, you should download that and download one of the PvP packages from someone like Mez or Sudo. Personally, I don't use Weak Auras because I don't like the look of it on my screen and all the sounds, so I'm just an old stubborn person, but I highly recommend that you use them. I think that it's just such a handicap to not have them, to be honest. The next add-ons that I'd recommend would be Gladius or S Arena. That displays the enemy frames somewhere on your screen so you can track DRs on them, or you can even add like cooldowns to that to see what cooldowns they have, but I really just use mine to track the DRs on the enemy team. The next add-on that I'd recommend would be Omnibar, and I actually have 2 Omnibars set up in my UI. I have one to track kicks right here, so all the enemy interrupts are tracked right here, so I know that whenever I'm free or not free to cast. And then I've got a separate Omnibar for like crowd control abilities like stuns and whatnot. So I know whenever I need to maybe press Holy Ward or Fade or Death and incoming instant CC. So I think it's good to track things like that for that reason. And I like to track them separately just so I can see them better. Another add-on is Omni CD. I think it's really helpful for tracking your teammates' CDs, especially when you are not playing with voice. So you want to know when, for instance, your paladin has bubble or if they have lay on hands or not, and being able to just glance at their frame and see that is super helpful. I think it's mostly helpful for when you're playing without Discord or any sort of team comms, and generally that's what I'm doing, so it's very, very helpful for me. The last one that I'd recommend is Diminish, and that tracks diminishing returns on yourself, so you can see when you are coming off of stun DR or when you are coming off of sheep DR. So maybe you intentionally will tank a polymorph because you know it's going to be half and you would rather extend the DR on yourself. Things like that are helpful. So Diminish is a really great add-on, and you can also track the DRs on your teammates using that add-on too. So other than that, I'm sure there's lots of great helpful add-ons for arenas, but I think those are kind of like the bare minimum. All right, let's talk about our healing cooldowns and how we want to trade those. The first one I'm generally trading out in most games is Spirit of Redemption. So as soon as I see the enemy team popping off, I will pop into angel form like this, and I will start channeling my Divine Hymn. This will stack a healing buff on my teammates that lasts for, I think, 20 seconds. And so they're taking extra healing from me while the enemy team is bursting. If I feel like a teammate could get one shot while I'm going into angel form, I might Guardian Spirit them before I start channeling my hymn. So just keep that in mind. Guardian Spirit is something that you should generally use when a target's at low health and pair it with something like a Serenity as an instant way to top someone. The only other way that you're going to use Guardian Spirit is if, say, you don't have a trinket and you need to pre-Guardian Spirit someone as a sort of a last-ditch effort to survive. I wouldn't recommend doing this regularly. Again, it's just a last resort. So I get stunned, I have no trinket, and I see that my mage has no ice block and is going to die if I get CC'd off of this stun. I might toss a Guardian Spirit on them just because it's the best button that I can press at that time. Otherwise, you don't want to get in the habit of pressing Guardian Spirit before goes just to survive like that. I think that that's not the best value for the spell, and it'll just get procced, which isn't great. Apotheosis is kind of like your Spirit of Redemption. It's a great throughput cooldown, so maybe the next set of damage I don't have Spirit of Redemption back, and I don't have any instant healing. Apotheosis will help generate that instant healing. You can also use it offensively to get a Chastise back, so maybe you see an opportunity to win the game if you have Chastise, and you use Apotheosis to do so. Power Infusion is generally paired with one of your teammates' large cooldowns, so if you're playing with a Marksmanship Hunter, you want to Power Infuse them whenever they are pressing True Shot Aura, or if you're playing with a Ret Paladin, you want to Power Infuse them when they're pressing Wings, or a Mage when they're pressing Combust or Icy Veins. So really just be mindful of your teammates' cooldowns. And lastly, defensive cooldown would be your Void Shift. So you want to use this as sort of a last resort. The strength of Void Shift is that it's not affected by dampening, so it has a lot of value later in the game. So you want to use this as a last resort cooldown, so keep that in mind. All right, let's talk about healing rotation a little bit. I hate to say rotation because PvP, there's really no sort of sequence that you can just reliably perform over and over again as a healer. You're getting hit with CC and you have to respond in less than perfect ways sometimes. So in an ideal world, what we're going to do is place our Lightwell somewhere in a good spot in the arena to where it's not going to be out of line of sight of our teammates and it's actually going to heal them. Other than that, we're going to really try and focus on using as much instant healing as we can to keep our teammates alive. So I will press my Premonition to start off. just to get it rolling on cooldown. And then I'm generally pressing palm every opportunity that I get. And now that I press premonition, I've got a free heal. So instant cast heal. And let's say someone needs a big heal, I can press my Holy Word Serenity on them. Now I've used both of those, so that kind of stinks because those are my big instant heals. So I'm going to press palm to reduce the cooldown on Serenity. And if I ever proc any instant flash heals, I can use those to reduce the cooldown as well. I'll use Holy Word Sanctify as an instant heal as well, because it has a chance to reset the cooldown on my Prayer of Mending, like it just did there. So I'm pressing that, and you can see I've already built back a Serenity by now. And then I'm going to press my Premonition and press Heal because I got a free heal there. Press Premonition again, press Heal again, press Palm. Okay, we've got another Serenity back. So we're really just kind of cycling between all of our instants that we can so that we generate Serenities and we're able to keep our team alive with those. Thing to point out is that you're not always going to have a Serenity or another instant cast to press. And in those cases, you might have to fake a kick using Flash Heal or Heal. Heal is your much more mana efficient spell, but it's a longer cast, so you run the risk of someone getting killed in the cast time. So just kind of respond how you need to. If it's a bursty situation, you might have to just spam Flash Heal, which is really not ideal, but sometimes that's what you got to do. So yeah, you're kind of just playing around your instant casts and really pressing Palm off cooldown, Premonition off cooldown, and all of those things you're doing to build back Serenity charges. This season, it feels like Holy Priest can play a lot of comps, but I'll go ahead and list what I believe are the S tier comps, and those are RMP, Rogue Mage Priest, and Cupid Cleave, which is Ret Paladin, Hunter, Priest. I think that those two comps are definitely a notch above the rest. It feels like Cupid Cleave can kind of just face roll a lot of comps in certain matchups, and it doesn't have a lot of weaknesses right now just because Hunters and Ret Paladins are so strong. And it feels like RMP, it can win against anything. It might have more challenging matchups than others, but Outlaw RMP is very strong. You can still play sub, it's just, I think, not as good as Outlaw RMP. So those are the two S tier comps that I would recommend playing if you have the access to them. I think Jungle is probably an A tier comp right now, so just a notch below RMP and Cupid. It's still viable, but I don't think it's nearly as good as those two, and that's with a Feral Druid and a Hunter. The Feral Druid just seems to be a bit of a liability when you're playing that comp, and that sometimes you just can't keep them alive, but it's still a good comp. Otherwise, I think you can play a lot of other stuff. You can play Wizards, you can play Melee Cleaves. I just think maybe you're not the best healers for those comps, but certainly viable up to a certain point. I think that you can play many different ways this season as a Holy Priest, and it really boils down to your personal preference and maybe the comp you're playing and facing. So if you're more of an aggressive player, you can play more aggressively, and that might work for you. Or if you're more of a passive player and you just want to keep your teammates alive, you can do that, and I think that that can be good too. I personally kind of would recommend leaning towards the more passive CC avoidant approach if you're a newer player. I always think it's best to avoid as much CC as you can and to keep your teammates for alive as long as possible. That as you're at a lower rating and trying to improve, you're going to see the most value from doing things like that rather than trying to run across the map and chastise fear the healer on your own and, you know, potentially tank CC and then lose the game. So that's just my personal opinion, and I think that playstyle, like I said, I think it's largely dependent upon your personal preference and that you can succeed either way. So whatever you feel like doing, do. My recommendation is, as I said. I hope that this was helpful to all of you watching. Definitely give me any feedback in the comments. It's my first time making one of these guides. For you new priests or people that are really trying to, get your first gladiator, I'd recommend playing one of those S tier comps that I listed in the video and kind of playing that only and really focusing on building a team that you can play with each night or as often as you guys can. having that sort of consistency gives you a baseline for where you need to improve. It's a little more difficult to improve when you're playing a different comp every day that maybe requires a different sort of play style. So that would be my number one tip, is find a strong comp and play it consistently. My second tip would be to take that passive approach to the game and to keep your teammates alive for as long as possible, and avoid as much CC as you can. I think that when you're improving, that's more important than trying to make big plays. But the beauty of Holy Priest is you can play however you want, and it can work either way. So I'm excited to see what y'all are able to do, and yeah, thank you so much for watching.